It's Wednesday. Thank you for joining us for day 4 of Passion Week. This Sunday we looked at the triumphal entry in Matthew's account, and Jesus entered Jerusalem proclaiming that he was in fact king. As we looked at day 2 and the cleansing of the temple and talked about the deep cleaning that we need to do. Yesterday we looked at the third day of Passion Week, and we looked at what I called a little fruity, and how Jesus condemned the Pharisees and the Sadducees and the religious leaders for failing to bear fruit in their lives. And now we continue to look at Matthew 24 and 25, and even the first part of chapter 26, what I want to call the end of the world. As you can see, I'm at home. I'm in my studio here. Mac has had a couple episodes. He's had some of those absent seizures, so I want to encourage you to be in prayer for him. So I've decided to work from home today, so I decided to get a little help in leading the worship from the kids today. Hope you enjoy. Lord, I lift your name on high. Lord, I love to sing your praises. I'm so glad you're in my life. I'm so glad you came to save us. You came from heaven to earth to show the way from the earth to the cross. My death, from the cross to the grave, from the grave to the sky. Lord, I lift your name on high. Lord, I lift your name on high. I love to sing your praises. I'm so glad you're in my life. I'm so glad you came to save us. You came from heaven to earth to show the way from the earth to the cross. My death, from the cross to the grave, from the grave to the sky. Lord, I lift your name on high. You came from heaven to earth to show the way from the earth to the cross. My death, from the cross to the grave, from the grave to the sky. Lord, I lift your name on high. Lord, I lift your name on high. One more time, boys. Lord, I lift your name on high. The coronavirus continues to spread across the world, doing damage. Worldwide, we have around 1.5 million cases with over 87,000 deaths. Of course, leading the way with the highest numbers in the United States of America with over 400,000 cases and over 14,000 deaths. Today in the New York Times, they announced that the coronavirus has claimed more lives in New York City than the terrorist attacks on September 11th, 2001. Have you heard anyone talking about like this, like it is the end of the world? Well, it's definitely bad. I won't disagree with that. But Jesus talks about the end of the world, or at least the end of the age. It's Wednesday of Passion Week, and as we continue to look at Matthew's account, I hope you'll join me in God's Word. Chapter 24, beginning in the first verse, it says that Jesus left the temple and was going away when his disciples came to point out to him the buildings of the temple. But he answered them, "You see all these, do you not? Truly I say to you, there will not be left here one stone upon another that will not be thrown down." As he sat on the Mount of Olives, the disciples came to him privately, saying, "Tell us, when will these things be, and what will be the sign of your coming and of the end of the age?" And of course, King James Version says the end of the world right there. Well, Jesus answered them because he didn't want them to be led astray. He said that that many would come in his name, would come claiming to be him or coming in his name, and that there would be many wars and rumors of wars. And in verse 6b, he says, "See that you are not alarmed, for this must take place, but the end is not yet." He continues to talk about nation rising against nation, kingdom against kingdom. There would be famines and earthquakes. And he says in verse 8, all these are but the beginnings of the birth pains. Jesus continues over the course of these 2 chapters here, talking about different prophecies, about the destruction of Jerusalem, about tribulation, and about his return. He talks about the fig tree and the lessons from that fig tree, that there will be signs to know when it is near. Heaven and earth will pass away, but we need to know that Jesus' words will not, that they will last forever. We see that no one knows the day or the hour. Only the Father knows, not the angels. And Jesus said that he did not know. But he did say that just like in the days of Noah, people were eating and drinking, getting married up until the flood waters came. He said it would be similar to that. Therefore, we are to stay alert, to be prepared, to be ready. Verse 44, therefore, you also must be ready, for the Son of Man is coming at an hour you do not expect. See, Jesus is coming in an hour that we're unaware of what time exactly that will be. And we want to be faithful. We want to be wise servants. We want to be found actively obedient when he does come. Jesus continues over those chapters talking about rewards and punishments that will be handed out when Jesus comes, depending on faithfulness or depending on a lack of faithfulness. Beginning in chapter 25, he tells the parable of the 10 virgins. And then in verse 13 of that, he says, watch therefore, for you know neither the day nor the hour. He continues in the parable of the talents. And you're probably familiar with this. The 3 servants who were given different amounts of talents. And 2 of them were faithful, good stewards of those, investing what Jesus had given them. And both of them get the same reply. Well done, good and faithful servant. You've been faithful over a little. I will set you over much. Enter now into the joy of your master. Of course, the 3rd servant did not, and it did not end well for him. Jesus continued talking about the final judgment. Verse 31, he says, when the Son of Man comes in his glory, and all the angels with him, then he will sit on his glorious throne. Before him will be gathered all the nations, and he will separate people one from another. Of course, the story continues in chapter 26. Verse 1, it says, when Jesus had finished all these sayings, he said to his disciples, you know that after 2 days the Passover is coming, and the Son of Man will be delivered to be crucified. Jesus was again heading to the cross. Jesus came in there finally really announcing who he was as king, and it created quite a stir as he called out the religious leaders for failing to bear fruit, failing to be genuine and real in their worship. It tells us right there in the next couple of verses then that the religious leaders plotted to arrest him by stealth and to kill him. We'll look at just a few more verses before we end looking at the verses and pick up more tomorrow. Again, in chapter 26, verse 6, it says, now when Jesus was at Bethany in the house of Simon the leper, a woman came up to him with an alabaster flask of very expensive ointment, and she poured it on his head as he was reclined at table. And when the disciples saw it, they were indignant, saying, why this waste? For this could have been sold for a large sum and given to the poor. But Jesus, aware of this, said to them, why do you trouble the woman? For she has done a beautiful thing to me. For you always have the poor with you, but you will not always have me. And pouring this ointment on my body, she has done it to prepare me for burial. Truly I say to you, wherever this gospel is proclaimed in the whole world, what she has done will also be told in memory of her. Immediately after that, in verse 14, it says, then one of the 12, whose name was Judas Iscariot, went to the chief priests and said, what will you give me if I deliver him over to you? And they paid him 30 pieces of silver. And from that moment, he sought an opportunity to betray him. What kind of reaction do we have to Jesus? Are we just listening but unsure of what was going on? That's clearly how the disciples were, the majority of them, listening and trying their best to understand, but couldn't get it. If so, if that's us, we just need to stay on course and be faithful and follow Jesus and follow the last commands that we know for sure, but stay with him. Be obedient to him. Are we prepared to celebrate Jesus' death and worship him? Are we ready to give him the place of honor that he deserves? One right here knew what was going to happen and was giving him that honor, preparing for his burial. And as we look on the other side, we continue to worship him because of his death, because of the burial, and because of his resurrection. We do need to know that the things of this earth are temporary, that they will pass away. Even the good things that God has given us, these things are temporary around us, and we need to know that and put our value in the things that are of eternal. The truth of God's word is eternal. It is permanent. Christ followers will face persecution. We will face tribulation. Some will try to deceive us. There will be temptations for us to compromise all around. And there's no guarantee that God will deliver us from every trial, as we're seeing around the world right now with this pandemic that is going on. But he will deliver us through them. We need to know that Jesus is going to come again. No matter how bad things get, we have the promise that Jesus is coming back, and he will gather his people from all over. The first time Jesus came, he came humbly in a manger, but he came to bring salvation. The second time he's coming, and it'll be in power and in majesty, and he's coming to bring judgment. We must watch and we must pray. We must be patient, and we must be active in following his commands, following his word, following the call that he has on our lives. We must work together to lift his name on high and to be busy about making disciples who make disciples.